What's up guys, Shawnthebro here, and in today's episode of the Super Smash Brothers and Platform Fighter tutorial series, we're going to be going over multiplayer menus. So specifically in today's episode, we're going to be going over multiplayer menus using one input device. At the current time, we have the ability to use keyboard and controllers in our game. However, on the menu, controllers did not work. So we're going to use our keyboard today to control our multiple characters to spawn them in by using different tokens. And once we get this working, we can then work on controller inputs for our menus. So the way this is going to work is I'm going to press the button to grab a token, and it is going to alternate. So I only have one input device, so as I press the button, we switch back and forth between player 1 and player 2. So I can actually make player 1 the mannequin or the second mannequin, and player 2 the mannequin or the second mannequin, and the same goes for random. Then I can name them, so STB, Shawnthebro, and STB2, Shawnthebro 2. And when I come into the game, I will select my stage, which we don't need multiplayer menus for the stage select. And here we go. You can see that we have our characters. Now it's very hard to tell the difference between the two because they are the same mesh currently. So it appears as though they are the same character. In your case, it might be a little bit easier to distinguish them. But to be honest, it doesn't really matter. You can tell that they are different characters because I have STB1 on the left here, STB2 on the right here. And if we look at the characters down here, player 1 is the mannequin and player 2 is the mannequin 2. So they are the proper characters. During this episode, I will also do a live demo on how to set up characters 3 and 4, selecting them during the menu. So we're going to be able to select all 4 of our characters, or as many as you have right now, in an alternating fashion on our character select screen. If you guys want to get caught up in this series and check out everything we've done, from the character selection screen to our attacks, our launching, our stocks, and game modes, you can click this playlist in the top right corner right here. Check all that out. See it from scratch to the current point. Alternatively, you can check out this episode in the iCard in the top right corner right here, which will allow you to see how we set up the character select screen in the first place. We're going to be building off this logic a lot today, so it is important that you have this down if you haven't done it already. Now we can go ahead and get started. So the first thing we want to do is go to our character select screen, and we're going to go to our design view. So in the character select screen, we had a token in the top left. Now you'll notice I have changed the image of my token, but that's not really important. This is just a visual change. I quite literally changed the image that I have on the CS coin widget. So if I go to my CS coin, instead of being that other art I had before, I made a custom image that we can use going forward in the series. As you can see, my image is the P1 token image. And if I actually go to this area, I have tokens for P1, P2, P3, and P4. Red, blue, green, and purple. Also, instead of using the hand with the old token, I've made new images for the hand with each one of these tokens. Again, not required that you do that by any means, but I wanted to separate players 1 through 4. That way you could see that they were different, and we weren't always using the same coin and making things more confusing than they had to be. There's one thing we have to do with this image and this CS coin widget in general, and that is to make sure that our coin image is in fact a variable. If you didn't have it as a variable before for any reason, that is fine, but we are going to actually update it based on the player that is controlling this. And so we want to make sure that the coin image is a variable so we can change the brush image to the P1, P2, P3, or P4 token. Now after that, I've gone to my grab CS cursor, which is the image of the hand and the token or the coin below it. I'm of course using my new image here as well instead of the one with the old coin. And this is called cursor image. Now we had set this up to be a type of cursor since we are controlling this with our mouse currently. When we start controlling the screen with controls on our keyboard or on our controllers, we will be able to simply change this image based on the player that is controlling it. But with the current system we have, going to Edit, Project Settings, then scrolling down to User Interface, we had set up the default cursor, which was the hand without a coin, and then the grab hand closed cursor, which is the grab CS cursor, which is what we have here. But since we are using this cursor method, I figured at least for today's episode we could continue to use it. And so I've set up 3 other cursors as well and assigned all the other images as one of them. So each hand with the corresponding token, player 1 through 4. To do this, if you look at your software cursor section where we had our default and our grab hand closed, we can just add more elements by pressing the plus sign here. And so as long as we keep track of which one corresponds to what player, it doesn't really matter. You can use up all of these slots if you have to. Now, grab hand close sound good for the first one. For the other ones, I'm going to use grab hand, hand, and simply eyedropper. Again, as long as I am remembering which ones these cursors belong to, it doesn't matter what selection I actually make. And now we need widgets to put in all of these. So what I've done is gone to where my grab CS cursor was, and I've right-clicked on the file and I've duplicated it. I've duplicated it 3 times so that I could have grab CS cursor 2, grab CS cursor 3, and grab CS cursor 4. So here's grab CS cursor 2, here's grab CS cursor 3, and here is grab CS cursor 4. So in each of these, they are exactly the same as the previous widget, but the image has changed. So instead of being P1 token grab in my grab CS cursor, it is P2 token grab in grab CS cursor 2. Grab CS cursor 3 is P3 token grab, and you guessed it, grab CS cursor 4 is P4 token grab. This method is a little weird because we could just change the image on grab CS cursor. The problem is when we are trying to alternate players on a single device, especially the mouse in particular, it is going to give us a little bit of trouble, as the mouse itself is set to an image based off of our project settings and our software cursors. And so the widget is what handles what the cursor looks like, and if we change the widget, it will change it for all players. I'm going to show you an easy solution to this in the next episodes, like I mentioned, so don't worry about this too much for now. I've just done it this way so that we can have everything working in today's episode without setting up further logic that allows us to control the cursor. We're just going to continue to use the standard mouse logic to control our cursor. At this point, make sure you do set up the rest of your software cursors here, because we do have all the corresponding widgets, so you can actually select them in the list here. Now, you may want to keep this open for reference so that you know what to set your cursors to in the character select screen. But we don't need it right this second, so we can go to the character select screen now. And remember, I was looking at these tokens before. So we had one widget on here that was called CS Coin, and it was a singular coin. We do need to have separate coins for each player, because even if the players have made their selections, we can't get rid of the coins that are there. The coins are meant to stay on the characters they've selected. That way we can show to everyone where their selection is, and then they can also grab their button back as well. So I have my standard CS coin here, and then I've just right-clicked and duplicated it again for P2, P3, and P4. So I just renamed them P2, P3, P4. You don't have to change the image of these coins on here because we are going to actually change them when we take control of each player on the input device. So on our keyboard, when we switch to player 2, player 3, player 4, we are going to switch the image of CS coin. So it is not required that you try and change anything here or before. They're going to be hidden until we are ready to use them, and then we will change their image and the player will be none the wiser. Now, you don't really have to change anything on here actually. Just make sure that they are all hidden or collapsed in terms of their visibility by default. If they are, then you won't be able to see them, so it won't matter that they're in the top left hand corner, and it won't matter that they all say P1 initially. They're going to be hidden. And you can see this is the case when we go into our character select screen. There is no coin here. So after you've added these CS coins to your widget, make sure that they are all variables as well, because we're going to need to access them in the graph. Once we have our cursor set up and we've added our CS coins to the widget, we can go into the graph, and it's going to be ugly. This is going to be one of the videos where I put it into the correct spot in the middle of the episode to try and stop any confusion from happening. We want to go to our grab coin event. Grab coin is what gets called, when we listen for input action, menu grab coin, or essentially we press the button that brings the coin or the token to the player's hand so they can go and place their token somewhere else on the menu. So whatever you call that event, again for me it is grab coin, that's what we want to go to. And the logic we had in here is pretty good. It's still going to stay essentially the same today, but with a few changes in terms of what player we are handling here. So in the previous episodes, we only ever checked if player 1 had the coin and did everything based off of player 1 and the standard CS coin. But now we have 4 CS coins and we have 4 players. So we want to make sure all those players are accounted for. So I've gone ahead and added some logic below it, which is mainly a copy and paste with a few minor additions and changes. So let's start to compare these now. So grab coin, what it was doing before was just checking if player 1 had the coin, and if they did, then we hid the coin, dropped the coin, and placed it there, checked where it was placed. But if they didn't have the coin, we retrieved the coin. So we grabbed the coin, said player 1 has the coin, and made the coin hidden because we were just using the cursor as the hand with the coin to trick the player into thinking that the hand was holding the coin and we were transferring it. We are exactly doing that. As you can see here, player 1 has coin does go into the same logic that this previous branch went into, but there's a little bit different logic before now. So now we determine what player we're on, even though we're on one device, what player are we controlling, and we perform a switch on int. Depending on the player that we're controlling, we do different logic. So if we're controlling player 2, we check if player 2 has coin. Then we have to set the player 2 has coin variables and use CS coin P2 instead of the regular CS coin. So I'm going to clean this up. Alright, so you can see I've edited grab coin a little bit. What we're doing first is determining what player we are controlling. Because we're on one input device, we can't just grab the index of the controller. We're on a keyboard. We have to assume that each player is able to control their hand on the character select screen using this device. So I've made a new variable that is an integer. So you can press this plus to make a new variable. And I've called it multiple players on one device index. The default value is 0. An index of 0 means we are player 1. An index of 1 means player 2. An index of 2 means player 3. Index of 3 means player 4, and so on and so forth. Now, once we make this variable, we can go ahead and use it by dragging it into the graph, getting it, dragging off of that, and typing switch on int, switch on integer. Once we do this, we can determine what player we are controlling by what index this is. So you can press add pin to add as many as you want. We'll start with 2 players for now because that's what I've set up. We're going to set up player 3 and 4 in this episode as well, but we'll do that live at the end. So for right now, I just made mine look like this. And that's what we've got here. Now, if we are index 0, we know we are player 1. So essentially we can have all the same logic that we already had for our grab coin event. So if player 1 has the coin, if that's true, we come up here. We are releasing the coin because when we press the button to grab the coin and we already have it, we want to drop it in place. So we're releasing the coin, saying the player doesn't have the coin anymore, determining where they should actually drop it, placing the coin there, making it visible, then determining what it landed on. From here, we were getting the data from our players array and setting the actual character class selection. So basically whatever selection the player made by dropping their coin on it, we want to make sure that we set the in-game character to spawn as that type. Then I was doing a switch on the class to display the proper image to the character box, which is right here, this box down here. So when we drop our coin on the mannequin shows up here. And this is beneficial so you can also select and change their outfit in this case. Now, I did add something else after this that I haven't talked about yet. It's very small, but this is how we're actually going to keep track of our players. We're just going to go in order. So I want to make sure, first of all, before we do this logic, that the reason we're doing this logic is because the device we are using is meant for multiple players. This boolean that we set up is what we use to determine if we should control multiple characters on one device, such as the keyboard. So when we're in the game, we can control all of our characters on the same device. But when we're using controllers, that's not necessary. Every controller is one player. So we only want to do the logic we're doing today if this device is meant for multiple players. So to grab this variable, we can use our game instance reference that we've already had in this blueprint, and then find our variable, get is device used for multiple players, drag off of this into a branch, so basically a true or false. Then at this point, only if it's true do we do anything related to this logic, and what we do is we just increment the number of players. Multiple players on one device index, add 1 to it. So take our new variable, and you can type increment int. So now if it was 0 and we placed our token, that integer gets added. So the next time we call grab coin, the next time we press the button to pull a coin, we are going to go to index 1. Now we are in index 1, and index 1 is player 2. So we don't want to check player 1 has coin anymore. We want to check player 2 has coin. But otherwise, you can copy the logic and paste it below. We are going to make a few changes. Instead of going over all of this again, you can copy it, paste it, and I'll show you the relevant portions. So player 2 has coin is actually a variable that we had made earlier in the series, even though we didn't use it. So if you haven't made it, it's fine. Just make a new boolean that's the same as player 1 has coin. Make sure it's false by default. And check against this one now. So if it's true that player 2 has the coin, we're going to be setting the mouse cursor back to default, which is the open hand. And we're going to say that player 2 doesn't have the coin anymore. If player 2 has coin is false, that means we're picking up the coin. So we want to make sure that we get our player controller and set the mouse cursor to be the grab hand. This is a major difference that we need to keep track of. So for player 1, we use grab hand closed. The reason we use grab hand closed when setting our current mouse cursor is because in our user interface, software cursors, grab hand closed was grab CS cursor. That is this one right here, the red token. But when we are controlling player 2, we are setting the mouse cursor to be grab hand. Grab hand is grab CS cursor 2. Grab CS cursor 2 is the blue token, P2's token. So we need to make sure we're setting the correct mouse cursor. Default is always valid because the default doesn't change between players, but we do want to make sure we set the correct mouse cursor to get the right hand holding the right token. Then we want to say player 2 has coin, not player 1. We also want to hide the coin at this point, but we can't hide CS coin because that's not the coin we want to hide. We want to hide player 2's coin. So our CS coin P2 widget that we added to the character select screen, we can bring that in and call set visibility collapsed. So in player 1's case, it was CS coin set visibility, but now it's CS coin P2 set visibility. Going back to the true on player 2 has coin here, you can compare it to the logic above. So you can see get mouse position on viewport doesn't change between players. And we still call set render translation, but we do need to call set render translation on CS coin P2, not CS coin. So there is a minor difference there. Make sure you change that. Additionally, the coin that we have around is not P1 now. We want to make sure we are showing the P2 coin wherever we placed it. And to do that, we can drag off of our CS coin P2 widget here. And you'll notice that the CS coin has this coin image variable that we said to make a variable earlier in the episode. So if we drag off of the CS coin and type coin image, you can get coin image, which will get you this variable here. Then you can drag off the coin image and type set brush. And then you can right click on in brush and split the struct pin to get access to all the individual variables. And now we want to make sure that we change our in brush image to be P2 token. And now this coin will be displayed as player 2's coin. All right. Now, again, the set visibility, sure, that's what we were doing for player 1, but we were using regular CS coin. Make sure down here you use CS coin P2. There's a small change that I made for determine coin placement that I'll go over in a second. Then we go into our branch and we get our game instance reference and our players array. This time, we don't want to use index 0 within the players array. When we were doing player 1's logic, again, this is all player 1's logic up here. We were grabbing the game instance, grabbing the players, and using index 0 of the players array. That is the data for player 1. Now we are player 2, so we want to set data on player 2's data within the players array. That is index 1. So game instance players get at index 1. Set members and player details, and pass along the character class that comes from determine coin placement. Then we perform a switch on the character class, and from there we are setting player 2 character image to be the correct character icon. Notice before we were setting player 1 character image because player 1 was who had put the coin there. So player 1 slot is what got the image. But now we want player 2 slot to get the image when we select our character. So we have to make sure that under player 2's logic here, we're using our player 2 character image. Just to show you, this is player 2 character image. This is player 1 character image. And of course, this is player 3 and player 4 character image. At this point, we can do the same logic that we did for player 1. You actually don't even have to write this out twice. You could just connect it up here if you want. That is up to you. But I did a lot of copying and pasting for this one because I really wanted to show you all the differences. Now let's go to determine coin placement for a second. And this goes for player 1 and player 2. So determine coin placement is a function we have, and this is what determines where we actually have placed the coin. So using some simple math, we can determine where the coin was at on the widget, and that lets us know what spot we have actually selected. So, oh, we've selected the mannequin, or oh, we've put the coin where the mannequin 2 character is. Well, before we were doing the math based off of the CS coin widget variable, but now we have to account for multiple players as well. So if we pass in the coin that we're checking against, we can do all the same logic and just use this coin reference instead of the hard-coded CS coin variable. So if you click on your determine coin placement function and scroll down to inputs, you can add a new input parameter, and we want to add a parameter of CS coin object reference. This will keep track of the coin reference that we pass into the function, and from there we'll know what coin or what token to use when comparing positions. I've just called this coin ref. Now once you make this variable, let's go back to the event graph and let's make sure we pass it in. So for player 1, we have CS coin and we were calling determine coin placement. So we passed CS coin into coin ref. For player 2, we were using CS coin P2 and calling determine coin placement. So for this one, we want to pass in CS coin P2 into coin ref. Going into determine coin placement, now everywhere where we were using CS coin, we want to use our coin reference. So you can see I've just brought a reroute node up here. And instead of having CS coin go into the transform, got rid of it, and I'm having the determine coin placement go into transform. Then scrolling over, same thing for the next set of logic, instead of using CS coin, we're using that coin ref. See how the reference comes from the input parameter and goes above everything? We're just getting rid of the CS coin references. We're just using this coin ref here. And at that point, you're good to go. If you want to make sure that you have set it up properly, you can search in here for CS coin, and you'll get all your CS coins. And you see mine are only in the event graph. If I close the event graph tab, there's no other CS coins. That's what we want. We don't want CS coin to be in determine coin placement. All right, at that point, we're nearly done. I do want the rotation to reset once we've gone through all of our characters. So if we don't continue on to the next screen, but instead we want to grab a coin, I want to restart at player 1. So we have to reset our multiple players on one device index variable at some point. And it's very easy. All we have to do is go to the default section of the switch on integer and reset multiple players on one device index to 0. After doing this, we can then lead it back up to player 1 logic. So once we've reached the end of our switch, we'll go back to player 1. But we'll also reset the integer, so the next time we press this button, we will increment, we'll be on player 2, and we can go through the list again. To set the value of multiple players on one device index, it's super simple. You just drag your variable into the graph here and hit set. Alright, at this point we are actually done with the logic for P1 and P2, but I am going to set up P3 and P4 as well during this episode. So let's go ahead and do that quickly. What I want to do is add 2 more pins to our switch on int for 2 and 3. Now it might get a little bit ugly here, and I'll probably have to clean it up, but I'm going to space this out a little bit more. And so now I want to essentially copy any of the logic, preferably player 2, because there are a few extra things that we did in there, such as changing the brush on the coin image. And I'm just going to copy it all. You could definitely make a function, which would make this easier and a little bit cleaner. Alright, at this point I have copied over the logic 2 more times, so now you can see it's getting messy. But again, this is just proof of concept. It will work fine. If you want to clean it up and make it a function, that's great. That will work without an issue. We need to make sure that we make 2 more variables for player 3 and player 4 has coin. So I'm just going to make 2 more right here. Player 3 has coin. I'll move it up next to player 2 has coin. And then another variable for player 4 has coin. And I'll move that one up as well. Now at this point, our 2 new branches are going to use this new variable for player 3 has coin, and of course one for player 4 has coin. And this is basically the same thing that we did for player 1 and player 2. Now let's go over the logic again. So for player 3 has coin, we do not need to worry about the current mouse cursor when we are releasing it because it goes to default. But when we're setting it, we want to make sure that we set player 3 has coin. We're going to set it to false. Then we get the mouse position on the viewport. This is good, but we need to use CS coin P3, not CS coin P2. So I'm going to delete this. I'm going to grab my CS coin P3, get it. I'm going to plug it into the target and then into the reroute node. so that this coin image, player 3's coin image, can be set to P3 token, not P2 token. Then when we're setting visibility, we don't want to set it on CS coin P2, but instead CS coin P3. And we also want to drag that value into determine coin placement so that we look at where that coin was placed to determine what character player 3 is set to. Once that is done, we go over to our branch where we're checking if it's random. And if it's not random, we set the correct player index based on the player we are controlling to be this character, which is now going to be index 2 because player 3 is index 2 in the player's array. We do our switch on our E character class, and we don't want to set player 2 character image to this because this is player 3's token. So we want to set player 3 character image to this. We want to get player 3 character image, pass it in, I'm going to copy and paste it, and pass it in here as well. Now this logic is shared for all of them, so that is perfectly safe to do. Let's now go to the false if player 3 does not have the coin. We don't want to set the current mouse cursor to grab hand. Instead, we want to look at what has grab CS cursor 3, which is the hand cursor. So we just want to set it to hand. Then we don't want to say player 2 has the coin, but instead we want to say player 3 has the coin. Check that box. And then when we are hiding the coin, we don't want to hide player 2's coin, we want to hide player 3's coin. Alright, now before going any farther, we should be able to see that this actually works, and we should be able to control player 3 on the character select screen. So I can set 1, 2, and you can see I have my green token in my hand, and I can place it, and that's player 3 right there. Now all that's left is player 4, so I already have my branch here where we check player 4 has coin. Let's do it one final time. When we're setting the default mouse cursor, that is fine, but player 2 is not the one that we want to check if they have the coin or not. We want to check if player 4 has their coin or not. And we want to set it to be false because at this point they are releasing the coin. We want to get the position of the viewport of this coin, but we want to do it for P4, CS coin P4, not CS coin P2. I'm going to use that as the target. And we want to pass this along so that its coin image can be set to the appropriate brush, which is the P4 token, not the P2 token. Then, when we're making it visible, we want to make sure we're using CS coin P4 as well, and we want to pass that into determine coin placement as the coin ref, so we know where that coin was placed. Again, we're checking if it's random, and if it's not random, we want to set the player's array to this character. Player 4 is at an index of 3 in the player's array. Then we go to the switch statement, and we want to make sure we set the correct player character image. So we are going to use player 4 character image. Now, we use the same logic that is shared between all of the other players. At this point, if player 4 has coin as false, that means we're picking it up. So we don't want to set the current mouse cursor to grab hand. Instead, we want to use our last one, which is eyedropper. That is grab CS cursor 4. So use eyedropper. And instead of saying player 2 has the coin, we want to say player 4 has the coin. Check that box. And lastly, instead of hiding CS coin P2, we want to hide CS coin P4. Player 1, player 2, player 3, player 4. So players 1 through 4, I can put all their tokens. If I start pressing the buttons again, you can see I actually pick them up, and I can put them all on whatever character it is that I want. So we can now control all 4 characters in our character select screen. Another note here, and this goes for player 1 and player 2, but we were dragging the determine coin placement Boolean result into a branch. So is random gets returned into this branch. And if it's false, we do this logic here where we're setting the actual player array data to have the correct character selected. But if it's true we weren't doing anything before. If it's true now, I do want to bring it into the logic at the end here, where we are incrementing our multiple players on one device index. So just keep note of that. It is not blank anymore. And this is because even if it's random, that player has still made their choice, so we still want to go to the next player. Make sure you do that thing I mentioned with the isRandom branch, where you have the true branch going into the logic at the end every time. Don't forget that for any of your players. You do need that. Now there's another thing that we need to handle, and that is the changing of character skins. So when we are on the character select screen, we can click on player 1's character image here, and we can actually change the outfit that they will wear, or the skin that they will have on. But you'll notice this doesn't work for player 2, 3, or 4. This is because the on pressed was set up for each of the character buttons in a previous episode, and we called this function determine character skin. But determine character skin called the change skin function, and change skin function only set the correct image on player 1 character image. So what I'd recommend we do here is pass in an input parameter to our change character skin function that we have right here. We're going to make it an image. Let's make it an image, and let's make it an object reference, and we're going to call it the character image ref for character image reference. And we're going to replace the player 1 character image in the end nodes here, the set brush. We're going to get rid of player 1 character image, and we're going to use this new variable that we have. So I'm going to make a reroute node and pass it along the bottom here. And basically whatever image ref that we pass in here will have the brush set to this. And so something like that should do the trick. And so we're going to pass it into each of these set brush nodes, just like that. And now we just have to make sure when change character skin gets called, it has the correct character image reference. That is called from the determine character skin function. And you can see now that my change character skin has 2 new parameters, or really 1 new parameter on these 2 nodes. So we need to make sure that we actually set this correctly. And to do that, we could easily just pass the image into determine character skin, and then pass it straight through to the next function, the change character skin function. So if we also go to our determine character skin function, and we add a new parameter here, mine's image by default since that's the last one I made, but again we want image object reference, and we want to call it character image ref again, and also again I'm going to drag it into each of these. I'm going to make another reroute node, bring it down here, this function is actually going to expand, so I will go ahead and put it somewhere in the middle and just add a few additional reroute nodes to each of these as well. But there you go. So now change character skin has whatever was passed into determine character skin. Now one more time, let's go back to the event graph, and you'll see on pressed of this button is where we were calling determine character skin. But now we know exactly what player it should be for. So if we press the player 1 character button, we want to pass in player 1 character image. But if we press the player 2 character button, we want to pass in the player 2 character image. Player 3 character button should be player 3 character image. And player 4 character button should be player 4 character image. And at this point, we are good as long as our images are set up properly. So we had only ever set up player 1 character image to be correct in terms of its visibility and collision settings. And so you can copy that onto the other ones, but I'll cover it now. So the character image for each of these should technically be above the button, so that the button does not conflict with it. So I set the Z order to 10. And that is the case on all of these character images. But since the image is in front of the button, we actually click on the image, not the button. Now, how we solve this for the character 1 button is going to the player 1 character image, scrolling down to the visibility, in changing it from visible to not hit testable, self and all children. This makes it so we can click through this object, but it's still visible to the player. Now, the other character images were not like that, so we want to make sure we set all of these character images to be not hit testable, self and all children. Now, once we do that, we should be able to click through the image to the button and actually change the skin of the character for each of these characters. And you can see that we can. So all of these work as expected, and now we can actually set the appropriate character skin and outfit. All right, there is one more thing I want to do here, and that is fix up our determine random character function. So if we go to determine random character and we start pressing putting the coins on the random, you'll see that the random only goes to the first image here. But we don't want that. We want to make sure that each character and each player is represented appropriately. So we want to go to where our determine coin placement is right here, because in here we determined if we were on the random selection. Basically, we just treated it like every other object here, and if we happen to be within this box, we were considered within the random box, so we called the determine random character function. But if we go into that determine random character function, you'll see that in here, we were doing random to choose the specific character that we wanted to spawn, which was great, but we only ever did it for player index 0, and we only ever set player 1 character image to be this way. But that's not actually what we want. We want to base this off of what character selected random. Now, a simple solution would be to pass in multiple players on one device here, and have that index used in the index and the get, but the problem is this is only set if there are multiple players on one device, so in the case of controllers, this won't work. You can still do this if you just want to add another check later and separate your logic, or what you can do is manually pass in an index to determine random character by adding an input parameter here that is an integer to determine random character and just say player index. And then what we can do is pass the player index into the get node here. So clean this up a little bit. So now whatever gets passed into player index will get passed into this get. So we have to manually make sure that we're passing in the right data. Additionally, we don't want to just set brush to be player 1 character image, but we want to do the same thing that we did in the change character skin and determine character skin functions, where we use the appropriate player character image. Now, in this case, I'm going to do it a little bit more manual just because of not having the actual character reference that we want to use, but it's really simple. So instead of using player 1 character image, we can simply drag off of our player index that we're going to be adding here. And we can make another switch statement, just like we did in the grab coin event. And we can make sure we have a pin for all of our possibilities. And we can just pass in the correct player character image to all of the targets. So player 1 character image into target. We've got that one down already. Do something like this, and then we can just copy this logic essentially, and we can just use the other character images. But for index 1, it is going to be the player 2 character image, so we can bring this in as the target for index 1 here. And so on and so forth. We're going to do this for all of our players. So I can just copy this yet again, paste it. And for index 2, we want the player 3 character image. And lastly, index 3, we want the player 4 character image. Now, all of our cases are handled as far as this goes, but we need to make sure that we actually pass the correct player index into determine random character. And so what I would recommend to do for that is go to the determine coin placement And now you'll see that your determined random character has this player index. I recommend that we pass an index into determined coin placement, since we know exactly what player has triggered this determined coin placement, and then pass that along into our determined random character function. So in determined coin placement, I made a new input parameter that is also an integer, and I'm calling it player index. And then I'm going to just pass this all the way into determined random character. And again, I am going to go ahead and make a reroute node here, just to kind of clean this up. And we'll put it a little bit lower. And there we go. So now we have the player index coming from the determined coin placement function being passed into determined random character function. Now if we go to our event graph and where we call the determined coin placement, which is in, we call it 4 times, 1 for each player, we now have a player index variable here. And so we can simply pass in the correct index based on where we're at. This is player 1. You can tell because we're using standard CS coin. So player index 0 is perfect. The next one is player 2. So we want to pass in a player index of 1. Next one is player 3. We're going to pass in a player index of 2. And last one is player 4. So we're going to pass in a player index of 3. And now once we compile, we can run it. And we will be able to select random for all of our characters. Anyway, guys, that's all I got for you today, so thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please subscribe. It does more for myself and the channel than anything else you can do, and I just really appreciate it. I want to give a huge shout out to my YouTube membership and Patreon members and supporters. Thank you guys for the love and support. So incredibly grateful. If you had any issues with this tutorial or any of my tutorials, feel free to join the Discord community. I know this was a big one, so I'd be happy to help you out and get you sorted for free. But anyway, guys, like I said, that's all I got. So thank you so much for watching. I'm Shawnthebro, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye, guys.